Good morning, Knicks Nation. Today is Monday. It is the 18th day of April, 2022. Happy Monday. I hope you had a safe and healthy and enjoyable weekend. Blessings upon those that work in the healthcare field and those that are the first responders who are out here every day trying to save lives. And those that pick up garbage for us to keep streets and sidewalks clean, as well as those that make deliveries for our convenience, and double blessings on the men and women trying to rescue, deliver the victims of child molestation and pedophilia, the victims of prostitution and child prostitution, the victims of pornography and child pornography, as well as sex trafficking, human trafficking, and sex slavery, and double curses upon the perpetrators, the profiteers, and the perverts who traffic in human misery. Finally, blessings upon the homeless, nearly 600,000 men, women, and children in the United States, and millions around the world in similar or worse conditions. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom. I wanted to add to the video that we did over the weekend when the Knicks brass went to Dallas. Not to Dallas, excuse me. They went to Utah, to the Utah Dallas playoff game. And the thing is, I was thinking about why they were there. And we talked about this over the weekend, but I was thinking further about why they were there. And I was trying to understand, with my limited knowledge, the situation in terms of the players involved. Like, for example, it's been rumored that the Knicks would like to have Donovan Mitchell on their team, obviously. And we talked about that. But thinking about Donovan Mitchell, right? When you think about the situation. Now, in this day and age in which we live, NBA players have a lot of power. There's no doubt. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of say. And it's good. I think it's good. When you compare, like back in the day, NBA players had no power. It was Oscar Robinson, who was one of the greatest players ever, period. Oscar Robinson. I was fortunate enough to have seen him play, before he retired. I caught him at the end of his career, late 60s, early 70s. He won a championship with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But Oscar Robinson challenged the NBA as a employee that was that basically he pushed for what became free agency. And they tried to blackball Oscar Robinson. If you notice, he never became a coach. He really was on the outskirts of the NBA. But because of how great a player he was, and how popular in turn he was with that, even in that era, this was before there was, internet and social media. Oscar Robinson was the man. And so that helped him push the cause. And there were two players, one in baseball, Kurt Flood, and the other one in basketball, Oscar Robinson, that pushed their respective sports and leagues to allow players to become free agents. Once free agency became a real thing after Oscar Robinson pushed it, that gave the players, that was the beginning of the players getting power in the NBA. And so then it got to the point over time that when you had great players like Michael Jordan or Larry Bird or Magic Johnson, that teams really wanted to keep those players. And at that time, the mentality of the players was different. They would really want to stay. If they really liked the city they were in, they would really want to stay. Now, there were some exceptions. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, speaking of him, he was an exception because he was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks. He was from New York City, and he actually liked Washington, D.C. People don't know that. He wouldn't have minded playing for the Washington team, the Bullets at that time. They were Baltimore Bullets, became the Washington Bullets. He wouldn't have mind playing for them, but he end up going to the Los Angeles Lakers because that's the best deal that the Bucks got. They got a big haul for Kareem, as they would for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so he ended up with LA, and we know the story from there. But most players, Bird, Magic, Jordan, at that time, Isaiah Thomas, they really wanted to stay with their one team and have their whole career there. But then when the money started getting bigger, and the money in the NBA started getting bigger, when you had media outlets growing like ESPN, and they would buy rights to the games, right? And that put more money in the league, which put more money in the players' pockets. And so now the fear was teams like the Knicks or the Lakers would have more leverage because they were richer than all the other teams. Even to this day, the Knicks are the highest valued NBA team in the league. Been that way for a minute. So they were richer. And so then they started instituting, and then the salaries were starting to explode. So then the first thing they did was institute a rookie contract scale, because prior to, like, I want to say 95, the rookies could get whatever, so rookies were coming out getting huge contracts in their rookie deals. There was a guy named Donyell Marshall. You probably never heard of him. He came from UConn. And I think he got his rookie deal at the time was something like $40 million. It was a crazy number for a rookie. And that's when they started instituting rookie scale contracts around 96, 95. And they had a 4-year slot for their deal. And that's what you have all the way to this day. Then the money got even bigger because you had ABC and ESPN combined. You had China now getting involved with the NBA in terms of the popularity of the game in China. Thank you to people like Stephon Marbury, who went over there and became a legend and really promoted the game in doing so. And so that became a thing. And then you had, I forgot the guy. There was a player, of course, great player from Houston, played at Houston, came from China. He's a Hall of Famer. And that hugely impacted the money that the NBA is making. So now the players over time have gotten more power, starting with that free agency thing that Oscar Robertson started. So that now, in order to put a check and make it kind of like as much of an even playing field as possible, the NBA has been tweaking the rules so that they're trying to encourage players drafted by the teams to stay with those teams, as it was during Magic's time, during Bird's time, during Jordan's time. So they have revenue sharing. They have, and then of course the contracts are huge, and there's guaranteed increases in the contract. So that brings me to Donovan Mitchell. So that a player has the option. The player still has the power now, but this is the deal. So you do your 4 years, okay, in your rookie scale contract. In your 3rd year of your rookie scale contract, you can sign an extension. The amount of the extension depends on certain things. Now, there's a base extension number depending on when you were drafted and what your initial salary was. And then if you make an all-star team or an all-NBA team or an all-defensive team, that raises your possibility. So Donovan Mitchell got a huge extension, 5 years, $163 million. He's not an unrestricted free agent until 2026. When he signed that deal, he's locked in to Utah. Now, he could force his way out. He could do that. How would he do that? Well, if he wanted out and it came time, like, I don't know the particulars of his contract. I'm looking at it, but it looks like it's just a straight 5-year deal. And most of the times players don't sign 5-year deals now. They sign 4 because they want the flexibility to leave if they want to. In fact, LeBron has been signing 1-year deals for like half of his career at least. He's been signing 1-year deals because he wants the flexibility to move. And then a guy of star of his magnitude will force the team that has him in order to keep him to really build around him and make a winner. And so he had, Kawhi Leonard started doing that. The players now doing that, but so Donovan signed a 5-year deal. that the first year of that deal started this season. So he has 4 more years at excess of $30 million. The last year is 2025, 2026. When he's 29 years old, he's going to get $37 million. Okay. That means that Utah controls him. He could want out, but Utah does not have to trade him to where he wants to be traded. He is under contract, and it's like locked tight for the next 4 years. So if Donovan Mitchell wanted to come to New York, if he wanted to be traded, Utah can ask what they want from any team. They could trade him to Houston if they wanted to for a boatload of picks. Why would another team, if Donovan Mitchell is saying he wants to go to New York, if he was, why would another team do that? They're all hoping a guy of this magnitude, like he's not LeBron, but he's a great player. He's a great NBA player. So they're hoping we can convince you to stay in our city. Okay. We can convince you to stay in our city. Now, Utah doesn't have to do anything. They could just decide, no, we're not trading you, period. And then make him play his contract out. And that becomes very ugly. That gets very ugly. Okay. Very ugly. And it's very difficult to do. It's a very difficult thing to pull off. Okay. Like Harden was able to get what he wanted, but he had one of those deals where he had player options. He did not sign a guaranteed 5-year deal where he couldn't go nowhere. That's why he could force his way to almost any place he wanted to. Same with Kawhi Leonard. Okay. Same with Paul George. Those level of players, those top 10 NBA players, they usually don't lock themselves in like that because they know that whatever city in today's league, it is not, New York doesn't have any marketing advantage over any team because of the internet, because of social media, because of the marketing on a worldwide basis that is done in the NBA. A player's going to get his money. Like Antetokounmpo knows, regardless if it's Milwaukee, New York, it doesn't matter. He going to get his money. Whereas back in the day, if you were in the bigger cities like a New York or a Los Angeles, you were going to get more money because of the marketing. Okay. Like that's why Shaq left Orlando to go to LA. He wanted to get into the Hollywood business. He wanted to do rap songs. He wanted to be in movies. He wanted the commercial money that's going to come with being in LA at that time. That's the way it was. But now it's more like reputation than it is actual dollars. Because the dollars you're going to get. So Antetokounmpo can know whether he's in LA, New York, or Milwaukee. He's going to get the money regardless. That's just how it is. So now it's more about the players' druthers, what they want in terms of the city, right? So Mitchell's from New York. So it makes sense that he might want to come here, but that's going to be difficult to do. Very difficult. I was thinking about that over the weekend. I said, it's almost impossible. You'd have to, and that's why like Berman said the other day that he mentioned RJ Barrett as the centerpiece of any trade going to Utah. And Utah would ask for RJ Barrett. So if you're the New York Knicks, do you want to give up RJ Barrett? And this is why you would not do it. This is why you would not. Aside from the obvious, you drafted RJ Barrett, number 3 overall. Aside from that, teams in a cultural situation, they develop reputations. Just like individuals, teams develop reputations. And one of the hallmarks of a stable organization is that when they draft a player, especially a high draft pick, they are committed to the player. They are committed to the player to develop the player. And to do all they can, as the league is trying to promote, to let that player finish their career in the city that drafted them. The Knicks have had a bad reputation of trading picks and trading key players to try to get the savior to New York. That's been their reputation for at least 20 years now. Okay. And that is part of what a change in culture means. When you bring in a Leon Rose and you bring in the Walt Perrin and you bring in a Brock Aller and you bring in a Tom Thibodeau, you're trying to change the perception and culture of the New York Knicks. You don't want that culture that we're just trading away our picks or we're trading away guys that we draft in the top 5 because the guy that we want that's under contract. And Utah, understanding that and being a small market team, they're not going to let you get away with that. They want RJ Barrett. They're going to want your Dallas pick, your number one for this year, whatever, how many picks they could get. They're going to try to get all of that. They're going another couple of young pieces. They're going to basically clean your cupboard for Donovan Mitchell. That's what they're going to do. Okay. So as a Knicks, you have to think, basically, you'd be starting over your team with Donovan Mitchell. Do you want to start team fresh with Donovan, some draft picks and minimal contracts? Because that's what it'll be. That's what it'll be. Okay. So that is why, as I thought about it more deeply, it's unlikely that Donovan Mitchell will come to New York. It's very unlikely because of his contract. Like I said, 5 years. He did what most players don't do today. He signed a 5-year deal. And I can't, you can't blame him because it's $163 million. That's multi-generational wealth right there. Okay. And he could probably make more money if he signed a 4-year deal with a player option in the 4th year and then offer his services to the highest bidder or wherever he wanted to go and get another. That's what LeBron started that. And now it's like I said, I named the play Kawhi, Paul George. They all do that, because they know they can get what they want. They can get more. Harden, they're eligible to sign. And that's Bradley Beal. He could get a crazy like 40, 50 million a year now because he signed shorter term deals. Same with Dame. Same thing. Okay. They come up for extension time and now everybody knows they can play and they looking for the bigger money. Okay. So, and it doesn't matter what city they're in. See, Dame is in Portland. Talk about a small market, right? So Donovan, I don't think he's able to go anywhere. I think he's locked into Utah. They locked him in. When they accomplish what teams want, especially in small markets, you get a star player, you got him in the late lottery, right? And you locked him in. He's an all-star level player and he ain't going nowhere. He locked into it. You and him agreed 5 years, $163 million. And again, it's possible he can come to New York. I mean, it's not impossible, but again, realistically, you're going to lose RJ, Obi, probably quick too. You're going to lose this year's number one. You're going to lose the number one the year after next because they can't do 2 years consecutively. They may give you Dallas's pick next year plus your pick in 2025. You want to lose all that for Donovan Mitchell and start over? Because that's what you're going to do. Okay, that's what you're going to have to do. So thinking about it like that, it's unlikely they went to that game thinking they were scouting Donovan Mitchell. Okay, unlikely. Okay, so let's talk about Brunson. As I said, aside from the extreme people that, believe Brunson's an all-star, I'm not saying, I don't want to put a cap on any player. So I can't say Brunson won't ever be an all-star. But from where we're at right now, from what I project at age 25 for him, he's the type of player that every coach wants to play for them in the sense that he has gotten all that he can out of his talent. And his talent is limited. He's limited in height, quickness. He's limited. He uses his brain, though, on a very high level. And he's gotten all that he can out of his talent. That's all you can ask for from an NBA player. So that being the case, he's a solid pro, a solid NBA pro, but he is not worth $80 million over 4 years. He's just not. Okay. Now it's possible if the Knicks were to get him, he's unrestricted free agent, which means any team could bid for his services now. Okay. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Now, that being the case, again, he was drafted by the Dallas Mavericks. They gave him his shot. He has made the most of his opportunity. That's why he's trying to cash in. You cannot blame him for that. But the Knicks already have 2 young prospects at the point guard spot. They drafted these 2 young prospects. both of these prospects are in their rookie deals. We talked about this over the weekend. So to me, it makes no sense unless Brunson was if Brunson was the final piece to get you into a deep playoff run. Okay. Because he'd be valuable to New York. That's the key thing you got to look at too. Not just his value in terms of the league, his market value, but what is his value to your team? Right? So he's a solid point guard. Solid. And he would stabilize, the New York Knicks offense. He's a liability on defense. He is not a good defender. He's a willing defender. But because of his physical limitations in terms of quickness, speed, lateral movement, height, all of that together, shorter wingspan, he's a liability on defense. Okay. So you have to decide, is this the guy that's going to get us to that deep playoff run? You see, I know that he's going to help the Knicks. I'm not saying he won't help us, but is it worth taking time away from the 2 point guards that you drafted? In the last 2 seasons, you drafted Emmanuel Quickley and you drafted Deuce McBride. Don't you want to see what you have with the guys you drafted as part of a what? Change in culture? Change in culture? See, so I am not convinced yet that they went to Dallas to look at Brunson or Donovan Mitchell, which leaves a third option. Actually, 2 more options. Julius Randle is from Dallas. He has a home in Dallas. We would assume he has fam in Dallas, friends in Dallas. We know that he gets very hyped and he's in a very good mental state when he comes to Dallas to play. Okay? Now, okay. So maybe they're looking at trade possibilities on either roster for Julius Randle. Julius, as mentioned over the weekend, he didn't come down there with them. He didn't come down there with Houston, Wesley, Worldwide West, and Dye. He didn't come down there. He just happened to be at the game. And he saw them. So they could have been going down there looking for a possible Julius Randle trade chip. Or 2. Because Julius is $20 million. He would love to play. See, I don't know all of his preferred destinations for Julius Randle, but I know Dallas is one of them. Okay? So they could have been looking at that. And then there's Mitchell Robinson, who also has a place in Dallas, who also enjoys that city, has let it be known that he enjoys Dallas as well as New Orleans. So, and it's also been rumored that Dallas is very interested in Mitchell Robinson. And you can see why when you have a Luka Doncic on the floor. You have a basketball savant, and then you have a really high IQ player in Brunson. And so those 2 point guards, you got really a steady situation. You add a rim runner, rim protector, like a Mitchell Robinson, an elite rim protector. You might have Utah again with Gobert and Mitchell, right? Donovan Mitchell. You might have a similar situation. In fact, you probably would. So they would be very interested in Mitchell Robinson. What can the Knicks get from them aside from Brunson for Mitchell Robinson that will get at least equal value? Okay. So that's what we're probably dealing with. What are they going to get from them? So they came to that game, and don't think for 1 second that the brass of the Knicks are not aware that when they were at that game, everybody in the world noticed that. No, don't think for 1 second that they were, see, look, if they wanted to come incognito, they'd be in a booth. You wouldn't even know they were there. They'd be in a booth, right? Cause they'd be, in a skybox watching the game and scouting the guys. Right? They could have sent them assistants that are on the sideline with Thibodeau. They could have sent Walt Perrin. They could have sent assistants with computers to be watching the guys, right? But no, those 3 came and they were in the stands so everybody could see them. Why? It's obviously they wanted to be seen. I don't know why. But one thing for sure. There's smoke now. There's smoke now. Like, it's something smoldering. There's going to be movement this summer. Something is going to happen. That's the thing. I can guarantee you the Knicks are not standing pat right now. They're not. They're going to make a move. What that move is, we will find out. Whether it's Brunson, whether it's a trade. I'm kind of ruling out Donovan Mitchell because of the control that Utah has over him. I don't care if they lose. Even if they lose and he starts whining about wanting to be traded, they don't have to trade him. They could tell him, okay, we're sorry. Be ready to play next year. Okay. Hey, that's the whole situation with Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons had to lose a whole season of pay in order to push his trade. Philly wasn't just going to trade him. They had him under contract. They wasn't just going to trade him. If it wasn't that Embiid and him did not get along, there was a split there. And they drafted, Maxey had a big role in them allowing him to walk. Cause when they got Maxey, they didn't need Simmons no more. And you see Maxey doing his thing in the playoff. Okay. So now that made Simmons expendable. And then at the same time, with Daryl Morey being in Philly, Harden wanted to play in Philly because him and Daryl Morey, they boys. So now that's to facilitate the whole deal. But the stars had to align for that to happen. You got Daryl Morey in Philly, Harden loving Daryl Morey, right? Simmons wanting out, drafting Tyrese Maxey. All of that worked together to make that happen. And that was difficult, as you saw. The whole season, Simmons and this whole drama was going on. Utah doesn't want that. I don't even think Donovan Mitchell wants to create that. He's not that type of kid, right? So he's locked in. I can't see him getting out of this. He's going to be there in Utah. Or the Knicks are going to give away half their team. It's going to be like a Carmelo Anthony Denver situation. Half their team plus prospects in terms of draft capital to get him. And they're going to be starting over like the Knicks did when they got Melo. Okay. So I don't want that. I like us in a changing culture to take the players we drafted and get what we can out of them while they're in their rookie deals. Maybe next year, at the end of next year, you're going to have, now you would have signed RJ. He'd be the first pick, number one pick the Knicks have signed since Charlie Ward. That's terrible. That just shows you how bad the manager's been. So they'll sign him. I don't think he's getting 181 million, but they're going to sign him. Okay. I say at least in the range of 100, 100, between 100, 150, maybe in the 120 range. They're going to sign RJ. So that's done. They're trying to sign Mitch Rob. That's questionable. But after this season, you're going to have Obi ready for an extension and you're going to have Emmanuel Quickly ready for an extension after this season. Okay. So they got future decisions to make. So if that's the case, if it was you and you got Emmanuel Quickly in his third season, Obi Toppin in his third season, you finally seeing these kids could play just like you drafted them to. Don't you want to find out what you have before it's time for the extension? Don't you want to really see what you have? And how you going to do that? You got to play them in order to see what you have. You drafted them. The terrible, tragic thing, a big, bad thing would be to have drafted Mitchell Robinson in the second round 4 years ago and lose him for nothing. That is a terrible move. It was bad even with Frank Ntilikina. Look, Kevin Knox didn't play either. They got Cam Reddish with him in a pick. They could have got even a second rounder for Frank, but they messed around with that for 4 seasons and got nothing. You cannot draft a kid in the first round. I don't care how scrubby he is. You got to get something for him. Okay. So they messed around there and now you get Mitchell Robinson in the second round, top in the league in field goal percentage, block shots, offensive rebounds, all in the top 5 in those categories. Yes, he's got more things he needs to develop, but that's just nitpicking. He's 24. And you're going to let him walk for nothing? That would be a really bad move. I don't see that happening. I cannot. They have to do a sign and trade or they got to sign him. That would be a horrible management move. Really bad. A fireable offense. Actually, honestly. And so Leon is under pressure right now. That's why I don't mind him not talking to the media. He can't be dealing with your questions of the media and Bermans and Stephen Bondi's and all these guys. He don't want to mess with that. He needs to focus on what he got to get done. Okay? And that is sign Mitch Rob. You don't have him for 4 years and then lose him. That's just bad management. See, when you have NBA players, they are the assets of the team. Okay? So you drafting a player, what you're drafting is an investment, an asset. You got to think about it like that. These are 4-year investments. Every player is. So when you get a guy and you're scouting him and you spend time interviewing him, you spend time going over his background, you spend time watching his film for hours, and now you draft him. That's your investment right there. That's your 4-year investment. And you're hoping to turn that into a positive return, either in performance or trade. Mitchell Robinson is such a situation. He's a 4-year investment. What are they going to get for their investment? They spent 4 years developing him. They can't let him just walk. They got to get something back. Okay? That's that. So overall, let's just review. I don't think Donovan Mitchell's coming here, even if he wants to. It's just, he's just locked down, man. 5 years, 163. He ain't going nowhere. There's no trade clause. I'm not sure if he got something that says he could be traded in his country. I don't think so. I think it's a straight 5-year, $163 million deal. He's not going to be a free agent until he's 30 years old. He got his money. He's in Utah. He's going to be there. Okay. Brunson is not 80 million, and I would be disappointed in Leon Rose, having been as savvy and as shrewd with finances as he has been, to sign Brunson for $80 million. I would be disappointed. It was Leon that drafted IQ and Deuce. I mean, Tibbs pushed for them, but the ultimate decision is Leon and Scott Perry. Okay. So that, I would be very disappointed if they overpaid for Brunson. Even to me, his market value, to me, the high level of Brunson's market value is 60 million. 4 years, 60. And that's the high value. I would really be more comfortable giving him 4 years, 55, like the Mitch Rob contract. I'll be more comfortable with that. Okay. He's getting his money. He's not a superstar. And I would like that better. Or 4 years, 60 with the 4th year as a team option. I would be more comfortable with that. Okay. But even then I'd be disappointed because we got 2 kids that need to play. And now you're giving Tibbs another veteran that he's going to play 40 minutes a game. Okay. So I'd be disappointed if they signed Brunson. I'd be disappointed in that because of who we have already and who we drafted and what we have to develop and the change in culture we're trying to create. Okay. So yeah, I don't think it's Donovan. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not Donovan Mitchell they're going to get no matter what Utah does. Even though Donovan Mitchell, if they lose in the second round, let's say he may want out, but that doesn't mean anything to Utah. It don't mean nothing. He signed, and they can get whatever they want from whoever they want for Donovan Mitchell. But I believe they need to trade Randle. Why do they need to trade? And again, there's players I love, like Mitchell Robinson and Deuce McBride. As I said, they're my 2 favorite players, but I have to look at it also as a business, right? It's a business as well as a sport. And I understand some fans can't look at the business side. They're looking at their favorite players. They like this guy or that guy. I get it. I do too. But this is business. Julius Randle, while he's a tremendous physical NBA talent, he is not a number 1 option. We have been saying this continually. Every team he has been on has lost. I mean, not even over 500. Every team. Except 1 year. That was last year. That was last 2 years ago now. That's the only time he was on a winning squad. He's not a player that makes everybody around him better. That's not to say he's not talented. He is talented. He's very talented. But he doesn't have a basketball IQ. He forces bad shots. And then worst of all, he can be a terrible teammate. We've all saw it. Look, this is not something that we didn't all watch on the screen for ourselves. His attitude sucked. It sucked. Arguing with the refs, arguing with the assistant coaches, pushing away his teammates. You don't want that. You don't want that on your team. If you're what? Changing your culture. You don't want that. Combine that with Thibodeau spoiling him and treating him differently than he treated all the other guys. And then somebody had the nerve to try to bring up Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing had a prima donna attitude, but Patrick Ewing was an 11-time All-Star. Not once, 11 times. Multiple-time All-NBA. A warrior. 2010 for the career. Okay, you can't argue with that. That's a prima donna. Okay, let him be a prima donna. They should have built around him. But this cat comes up with one winning season and he's okay, nice, All-Star, All-NBA. Then he goes back to what he's been doing the other 7 seasons and y'all want to trip like he's something we need to be keeping? Stop. First of all, he doesn't play well with RJ Barrett. It's a fact. Look at the stats. They don't play well together. And I'm not building around Julius Randle. I'm building around RJ. RJ is 21. 21. Julius is in his prime. He's 27, going to be 28 next year. You need to trade him and get what you can and build around RJ Barrett. See, we wouldn't have known if they played well together if we didn't have 3 years of Julius. We had 3 years of him. So we've seen how they work. They don't work well together. They don't. They don't play well together. IQ and RJ do. And IQ and Randle do. They do play well together. Okay? So you got to decide. You can't have, somebody said it the other day, said it very well. You can have 2 out of 3 and pay them. You can have Julius, RJ, and Mitchell Robinson. You can have 2 of those 3. You can't have all 3 and pay them because you need to have space or ability to trade if a superstar wants to come later when one of these kids pop, or you need to have space to be able to give the kids the money when one of them pops, right? If Obi becomes all-star talent, you got to pay him. You can't have already locked in money with Julius, Mitch Rob, and RJ. You need to get rid of one of them. It ain't going to be RJ. Now, Mitch Rob may leave or he may stay. It's got to be Julius. And then when you combine the fact that Obi Toppin actually plays better with RJ than Randle does, they make a better combination. And again, I happen to think, this is just me, I think Obi Toppin long term is going to be better than Julius Randle. I think he's got more talent. He's a different type of talent. He's not a roughneck, rebounder like Julius is. He's not that. But Julius can't run like Obi does. He can't. No, very few people can run like him. Okay? Very few people can. He doesn't play with the IQ that Obi can. And I'm telling you, I said this months ago. Some of y'all talking about he can't shoot and all he can do is dunk because y'all too short-sighted. What I said to y'all then and I'm saying now, all he needed was time. Minutes. Where he could sweat and not look over his shoulder and he could play relaxed. And you're going to see an all-star. I told y'all that. And look what we see. And I'm telling you, he is, and let's say 18 to 22 points a game, probably 6 to 8 rebounds a game, and assist dude. He's all that. And running the floor, and you got to watch him because he's going to get dunks on you. A 3-point shooter. I think he's a high 30s, low 40s 3-point shooter when you give him the time. And that's what, guy, you remember now, at the University of Dayton, he played 40 minutes. He can't, and that happens to a lot of guys. He can't come in the NBA and play 8 minutes and y'all think he going to show what he got. Same with Deuce. You give him a time when he don't have to look over his shoulder because Tom Thibodeau ready to pull him for something stupid while he playing Julius Randle for 6 turnovers. You let Deuce run. And you're going to get similar to what you saw in the G League. I was listening to this dude. I won't say his name because I don't want to just embarrass him like that. But he was talking about Deuce, not shooting well in the NBA. Maybe he can't shoot in the NBA. And he went off on the G League and didn't mention the minutes. You can't just take some guys off the bench like that and expect. That's why you have specialists. That's why there is a Jamal Crawford or Lou Williams or back in the day, a Vinny microwave, because they could do that. They can come off the bench and just light it up, just like that. Now everybody does that. Guys like Obi or Deuce, they need time. They need to know they're going to get 25 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the game. And you give them that, you're going to see the max come out of their potential. And when you drafting them, you should know that. When you drafting them, you should know that. And I believe the Knicks have professionals in their draft departments. Like I said, led by Walt Perrin, I think they're good. Okay? So they would know that. And that's why, a lot of people, you got to show me what you got now or you stink. That's how. But if you're really looking at a long-term sustainable winner, you got to look more long-term at the player's talent. How high is his upside? Does he have upside? Do you know what upside looks like? That's what you got to think about. Okay. So with Deuce and Emmanuel Quickly, they both have upside. They got drafted by the Knicks. The Knicks need to see what they have with these kids, because they could have the answer sitting on their own roster without looking all over the world for a point guard. Okay. So the Utah trip, I'm thinking they're looking for trade partners, and they're looking at rosters to see what they can get and their ideas and trade ideas, because I'm seeing that the possibility of either or Mitchell Robinson and or Julius Randle not being on this squad next season. And so they're looking at trade partners. That's what I think. Donovan Mitchell ain't going nowhere. And Rick Bunchen, unless he lowers his price, he ain't coming to New York unless he lowers his price. I really can't see, because like I said, Leon Rose has been very cheap. Very cheap, with his contracts. Even Julius Randle, because of the All-NBA status he had last year and the All-Star status, he was eligible for $200 million. He got half that. And even the half is laden with incentives. Like his base is like 106. And he could get up to 120 something if he meets the incentives, which he didn't meet this year. So that's what I'm saying. And his new contract starts next year. So, I think Leon did a good job with that one. He did a real good job. He gave the man half what he was eligible for. Okay. And that contract can be moved. Okay. It can. So, anyway, we'll see. But yeah, they were there over the weekend, and I don't think we're getting, now I'm of the mind, I don't think it's a very long shot for the Knicks to get Donovan Mitchell. Very long, because he's locked in. He's locked in Utah. Okay. It's a more chance they could get Brunson. They could get Brunson. What's the price though? And it's going to be at the expense of Emmanuel Quickly and Deuce. I don't like it. We're in year 3 of the rebuild. The Knicks are not going to the Eastern Conference Finals next year. We're in year 3 of the rebuild. Okay. Next step is develop your youth. Leon mentioned it 3 times in that statement. See, so it's going to be interesting, but definitely moves are going to be made this summer. Moves are going to be made. They're not out there doing that for nothing. There's a reason for it. So moves are going to be made. We're getting ready to see what they are in just a few weeks. I mean, really, when you think about it, really 2 months. Because by the time, you're going to get to draft night in June, and then there's free agency after that, you're going to see trades. And so it's going to be interesting. But I'm pulling for Leon. I got to pull for him. I love the Knicks. I got to pull for Leon to make the right moves. I got to pull for him to do that. And I believe he will. Okay. But in the meantime, happy Monday. You all enjoy your Monday. Shalom. Be safe.